Generating traffic and sales can be a challenge for online merchants. But selling on the Walmart Marketplace puts your products in front of millions of customers who shop on Walmart.com. And right now, sellers who join Walmart Marketplace can save up to 50% on referral and fulfillment fees for the first 90 days. So get started today. Head over to marketplace.walmart.com/savings. That's marketplace.walmart.com/savings.
Welcome to E-Commerce Conversations, a weekly podcast focusing on e-commerce topics featuring interviews with prominent people in the e-commerce space.
Welcome to E-Commerce Conversations by Practical E-Commerce. My name is Kerry Murdoch. Many merchants dream of building a successful e-commerce business and then selling it. Our guest today has done just that. She's here to describe the process and the post-sale emotions of it all. She is Shirley Tan, the founder and former owner of AmericanBridal.com, which is now owned by TheKnot.com. Well, Shirley, thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Kerry, for having me.
Shirley, you are the successful former owner of an e-commerce company, a very large e-commerce company, AmericanBridal.com, a self-made entrepreneur. You built and sold that business. There are many listeners to this podcast that own e-commerce businesses that are probably contemplating selling a business. You are someone who has been through that, and we'd like to talk to you about that today.
Absolutely, I'd be happy to share my experience with your listeners.
Well, thank you. Tell us, first of all, the company that you built and then sold is AmericanBridal.com. Tell us a little bit of background on that. When did you launch it? How long did you own it? When did you sell it? Who did you sell it to?
So I started American Bridal originally as a mail order catalog, and fortunately I failed at that rather quickly and learned that I didn't like producing catalogs. So, and at about the same time, the internet came along. So this was like 1996. We started the mail order catalog in '94. Puttered around for a couple of years, barely broke even, and then when the internet came along and a good friend of mine suggested registering our domain name, we listened and we moved the catalog online. So at that time, we were still thinking of it as a catalog online, but we soon discovered quickly that it was more than just a catalog online, and we could actually really operate it as like a real store, but it has a virtual presence.
And that was in '96.
That was in '96, right? So I kind of think of it officially. We moved to the Yahoo platform in 1997. So I kind of think of it, for my own sort of rationalization that I'll just start the clock ticking in 1997, because everything else was just sort of like research. That's pretty
darn innovative, though. I mean, in 1996, you were thinking internet. That's way before most of us.
Well, actually, we even had a shopping cart, if you want to call it that, a store. It's just that nobody bought anything from it, and we're like, why aren't there any transaction? Right, our stuff are great. There's nobody who has it. So, what was going on? And so, we learned early on that the platform that you're on is very important, and so we migrated to the Yahoo platform, and Yahoo had just bought another company, which I can't remember what it was, but they had just acquired something like a platform that they basically converted and made it into a Yahoo merchant solution.
And that was in 97 that you migrated.
97, yeah? Right, exactly.
You migrated to Yahoo in 97, and then you built the business, I know, over a number of years. When did you sell it, and who did you sell it to?
We sold the business The final sale was mid 2000, we closed the escrow May 2009, but the selling process really started early 2008, and I was a little of a bit of a wreck because the financial industry, the financial world was falling apart. So I was a bit of a wreck during that time period. I think everybody else was as well.
Why did you sell it?
Well, I decided to sell in early 2008, and the reason why was I was able to visit a really large competitor's operation, and based on that visit to that competitor's location, I realized that for me to take it to the next level, I'm going to need a lot more capital, and that it just was not a resource that I had, or I just wasn't willing to bet the family farm and move in that direction. So that was the crux of it, that I felt that in order to compete in this space, I'm going to need a lot more capital.
Who did you sell it to? I interrupted you when you were getting to that point.
I'm sorry. I eventually the acquiring company is the Knot.com, which recently changed their corporate name to the XOXO Group.
Okay. Was that the major competitor that you visited?
No, it wasn't them. But the Knot.com was a competitor, and they are the leading media conglomerate in the wedding space. So they are the 800-pound gorilla, so to speak. And so so they ended up buying it. It was good.
Yep. So you were talking about capital a minute ago, Shirley. You were to the point that you felt like you had taken the business as far as it could go with your setup and situation. Did you contemplate bringing in outside investors and not selling it?
We have explored that as well, and at least at that time, right? There's a lot of there's angel capital, there's VC capital, and the people that I've talked to, they just didn't think e-commerce was itself sexy, and it wasn't the type of business that people, angel investors or VC investors were really interested. They're more interested, at least especially for me, where I'm in Silicon, the Bay Area and Silicon Valley, where people are, more focused on technology companies. And so it was a bit discouraging, and therefore I just figured, okay, if I wasn't going to go that route, what other route could I take? And the friends and family route wasn't an option as well.
Without asking the specifics of the financial details, can you just give us an idea of the size of the transaction in terms of like the size of the business when you sold it? Or you could talk about SKUs, or if you disclose a rough range of the transaction. Can you give our readers?
I can't really say how much we sold it for. But I can say, and I have said this before, so this is kind of almost public information. At the time that we sold the business, we were doing roughly about $6.5 million.
Okay, all right.
That's pretty much all I can share because I've shared that before. So
okay,
that's
great
knowledge.
All right. Well, congratulations. That's a very successful.
And this is year over year, and not just the peak point or anything like that.
Yeah. Describe the process for us. So you've decided it's in 2008. You visited a competitor, a big company. You decided to make a move and to sell the business. Describe the selling process to us. First of all, the price. How was I'm not asking the price, just how was the price determined when you were negotiating with the seller? How did you arrive at a price?
So, in my mind, right, so I did a lot of research, and I'm a numbers person. So I kind of knew, based on, people I've researched, people I've talked to, people I've accountants, CPAs, attorneys, that, the range of what businesses are sold for, right? And I, spoken to business brokers as well. And so I kind of knew that it was in the range, right? There was going to be a certain number of multiples, and for this type of industry, for retail, right? In essence, you're basic where I was a retailer. It's just that I had an online presence, right? And so I knew the numbers that there was a range of multiples. So the range of multiple in retail is roughly, you can go one time, you can do 1x to 5x, maybe as much as 6x, right? So the key to getting, the maximum for your, for your time, your life, what you're invested all your life in when you build a business, is to try to get your X, right? The 5X, if 5X is the top, then you want to steer it to that. It's kind of like the Blue Book value of a car, right? It's 5,000 to 8,000. Of course, you want to go to the 8,000, not the 5,000. So what can you do to help get that multiple higher? Is what I was focused on.
And that's a multiple of cash flow, essentially annual cash flow or annual profits, I would assume.
Well, some people kind of base it on that or net income, right? So most companies are based on net income calculation.
Okay. All right. So it was a multiple of net income. It was how the price was determined. The proceeds that you received from the purchase, are you able to say, did you receive the entire purchase price at closing? Was there a payout on some of that?
So it was an asset purchase, and it was we worked it out that I would get paid in cash.
Okay. How did you find the buyer?
So that part is an interesting process, and I took rather unconventional path towards selling the business. And people always kind of like, really, you did that? So I excited to share the story. So what I did first, Carrie, was I made a list of who I thought were the most likely prospects in acquiring the business, and then and I made a dry run, right? So, and the way I approached it was, I looked at it was which companies online currently would benefit from the database, the list of customers that we've acquired over time. And, sort of like some people might call it an upstream or a downstream, right? So I made a list of all those potential. And then I made another list of companies that are would be, let's say competitors, right? So the Knot was on that list, right? And then I sorted that list by who, if I call this person, what are the probability of them saying yes? So and then I put in criteria, right? Who's going to have the money to pay me, as an example, versus is this more like a partnership? Am I going to be able to get out in a year, as an example, right? How long will I have to stay? Things of that nature. So I made all these criteria of what I would do if I was buying a business, and sort of like reverse it back. So sort of work backwards, right? So, and then what I did was I call all the long shots first, sort of like my Hail Marys, in football. And I don't know anything about football, but that's the only thing I know. So you throw your Hail Marys out there and see who catches it, right? And that's what I did. So, and then I practiced on all those people first, because I figured, well, they're going to say no anyway, so I must as well, get all the rejections out of the way, and, by then I'll be not immune, but, my pride wouldn't have been so, what do you call that? So beaten up, because I'll be sort of used to it. So that's what I did.
Good. I like it.
And at the end, by the time I got to the Knot, it was pretty straightforward. I called up the CEO and told him, 2 sentences. And he said, we'll call you next week. And they did.
Well, that is terrific. So how many companies did you call before you got to the Knot?
Oh, I called a lot.
Yeah.
I called baby companies. I even, gotten to be friends with a couple of the CEOs of, baby companies, right? So after you get married, you have a baby, right? At least that's the idea. And so, I thought baby companies are great, because then they have a list of all these people who got married, 9 months, 18 months later, they're going to start a family. So this is a great way to start, planting the seed, if you will. No pun intended.
So you've talked to the CEO of The Knot, and that person says, we'll call you back. They called you back, and from that conversation until you closed, how long did that take?
That took, let's see, I would say almost a year.
Okay, yeah.
Things take time, and, so it's good to start, it's good to start early, start to get the conversation going, because, and not only, I wasn't only just talking to them, I was talking to other people, so you just don't know, which conversation is going to get, further into the process. So it's good to have it's like a bunch of, sales call, right? You call a whole bunch of companies because you just don't know which deal is actually going to close, and the timing of it all as well. And the one thing that I can share with you is how I decided to put The Knot on the list was in one of the earnings calls that they had, the CEO had mentioned that they were going to, that they were in acquisition mode. So I was thinking, okay, that's like a clue, right? Mm-hmm. And I was really honed in on that. And then another thing that was, press releases are really great when you keep up with the industry, what's going on. And another thing that led me to really pick up the phone for them was, and that part was timing as well. So they brought in a new COO at that time. So I can't quite remember the timing, but I remember there was an announcement that was a new COO, and then I said, okay, so let that sit for a little bit. So when I actually picked up the phone, I think the CEO had only been there for a couple of months, and I knew that would be a good timing, because sometimes, you bring in new people, they want to,
do something.
They want to put a deal under their belt, if you will, right?
Sure, right.
So the timing of it was kind of fortuitous, and it just kind of worked out.
Are you still involved with American Bridal, or they're not?
No, I'm not. I'm no longer there.
Okay. Let's talk for a sec, Shirley, about yourself for a minute. You're a very successful, experienced entrepreneur. I'm just curious what you're up to now. What are you doing now?
So I'm still keeping up with all things e-commerce. I've done some consulting last year, and this year I'm just sort of taking a break. But I'm, I've been contemplating doing a lot of soul searching and trying to figure out what I want to do next. And one of the things that I've always wanted to do, even when I was, as an entrepreneur, right, as always, we work with so many third-party vendors and providers, and it's always kind of stuck in my mind that it would be great to work with a vendor who are focused on providing solutions for e-commerce entrepreneurs, clients that help, whether it be a back end like an order processing, order manager, or just client solutions that can help entrepreneurs grow their business. And really, I thought it would be a great experience for me. It would be a great learning experience, as well as I can add value to the vendor in developing product lines and solutions, because I've lived through it. I understand what entrepreneurs are going through, what's going in their mind when they think about, I'm hitting a wall on processing orders, I can't get enough orders out, or my solutions is not helping me, and what do I do? And the challenges and just the mental psychology that happens internally, right? And so I thought I could add a lot of value to that, as well as I would get a real good kick out of learning a lot more things.
Have you thought about starting with your experience? Have you thought about starting a company that services merchants?
Well, yes, except I don't want to. I think when you start something like that, you kind of do it all, right? And I think I'd be a lot more effective if I was really responsible for one piece of, the infrastructure versus being responsible for everything. Does that make sense?
Sure it does. Yeah.
Yeah, I really, this time in my life, I kind of want to zoom in on the things that I really think I can make a big impact instead of worrying about everything else that, goes with managing and owning a business, right?
That makes
So
sense.
it's sort of like, I've been there already. I want to try this other thing.
You want to try
and
the other?
when you're an entrepreneur, as many of your listeners can vouch, right? You wear every single hat, and it's a big responsibility.
So what's your advice, Shirley, for merchants that are listening to this, that are contemplating selling their e-commerce business? What's your advice not only about the financial or aspects, I guess, of selling a business, but sort of the lifestyle aspects of selling a business? I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't really consider that. They sell a bit, they throw everything they have into a business, they sell it, and they're going to wake up someday and they're not going to own that business. So what's sort of your advice to someone listening to this? They own a successful e-commerce business and they're thinking about selling it.
Carrie, I'm really glad you asked that question, because had somebody said that to me before, I probably would not have, even paid attention to that one aspect, right? And I think, in selling a business, everybody tells you, get your books in order and all that kind of stuff, right? I think that's the given, that is to be the minimum thing that you need to do. I think one thing that I never thought of, and I wish I had, right, is trying to figure out what am I going to do with myself. So there's two parts, right? What am I going to do with myself, or, in my mind, how to think through it as if I went to work for the company that bought me, right? So that means that I'm no longer the boss. I will have a boss. And that sounds so simplistic in itself, but I think if you've been doing your own thing, like I have for the last 19, 20 years, that's a big mental shift. And versus someone who's worked for other people before, went on their own, then they might have an easier time transitioning back. So I personally had a bit of a struggle, to be honest, right? And so I didn't think that part through, as well. And the other part was I didn't think through what I would be doing after I left. So I went through a bit of a mourning process, where it's like I missed it. I miss my staff. I miss the people I work with. I miss the third party vendors that that you work with almost on a daily basis, right, weekly basis. That I missed all of that. Not just the missing of being out of the action, but just the whole thing. Like I used to make these decisions. Now I'm no longer making those decisions. I'm no longer part of something. So I think there's that's something I would say, if there's one thing besides getting all your books in order and all that kind of stuff, is think about what you're going to do with yourself afterwards. Not the, rationalization or BS stuff that we tell ourselves sometimes, right? It's, be honest with yourself is what I'm saying. Be honest with yourself. What are you going to do next?
Shirley, I really appreciate your honesty and transparency there, because I think the very process that you went through, that's not frequently discussed. And entrepreneurs, someone that has built a business like you have, you're not exactly the type that's going to go play golf every day. And many of our listeners that are listening to this, or merchants that are listening to this, they are doers. They build things, they accomplish things, and the process that you just described is an honest emotion, and it's not one that's frequently discussed. And I just thank you. Thank you for sharing that with her.
I never heard it before, and I wish I did. I don't know if I would be paying attention, but if your listeners are, they are contemplating this, ask yourself that question. And it doesn't hurt to just have that in the back of your mind, and think about it before you, and ask yourself, why are you selling your business? Is it What are the reasons? Is it something that you can fix? Is it something that, like you said, can you bring in another person, maybe not additional money? Maybe you don't need the money. What you need more is like help, you know? So ask yourself those questions and be honest with yourself.
Good advice. We have just another minute or two left here, Shirley. Anything else on your mind for our listeners, e-commerce merchants?
Not really. I say, you know, I think people who become entrepreneurs have invented themselves, right, and created this opportunity for themselves. And I think it's great. And I really believe that you have the most you have the most opportunity when you are the person that's driving the bus. So don't forget that.
Now, for listeners that are wanting to reach you, you have given us permission to give out your email address. That's still acceptable, right?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. I'd be happy to, talk to people who are struggling through this, or just want to explore the possibilities. I'd be happy to help them out. I went through it, and I'm more than happy to share my experience.
So that would be Shirley at DearShirley.com. Did I say that correctly?
That's correct.
All right. That is Shirley at DearShirley.com. For purposes of our listeners, we've been visiting with Shirley Tan. Shirley is an e-commerce entrepreneur, early day e-commerce entrepreneur. She founded, built, and then sold AmericanBridal.com. She sold her business to a publicly traded company, TheKnot.com, and that's Shirley Tan. Shirley has agreed to answer any questions or to correspond with anyone if she can help them out. That email address is Shirley at DearShirley.com. And Shirley Tan, we want to thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Carrie, for having me.
That's all the time we have for this week's e-commerce conversation. I hope you enjoyed it. Please tune in next week for another new episode.